Welcome, guitar. Today we're learning some more strumming patterns from our text. So we're going to be looking at exercises 73 through 76. The first one is our basic down-up strum. It's following a consistent eighth note pattern. So we'll notice based on our strum markings over here, on the down beats, as we did with alternate picking, all of the beats 1, 2, 3, and 4 are going to be down strums, and that's going to be true whether we're using a pick, whether we're strumming if we're with a flick with indithe, or even if we're going to strum with the flat of our thumb. The down beats would be on 1, 2, 3, and 4. The down strums would be on those down beats, and likewise the up strums will fall on the off beats or the ands. So again, same thing if I'm using the pick. The strum will be up on the ands, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and, or if I'm doing my finger style, strumming style, the ands will be with a drag of I coming upwards. So 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and likewise if I'm going for that more folky, dampened kind of strum with the soft part of the skin on the thumb, the up strums would be still with the thumb, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. So either way, the hand is acting like a metronome in the sense that the counts 1, 2, 3, 4 are the down strums, and in order to be able to do 2 down strums or more in a row, we have to bring the hand back up, and we bring it back up in rhythm on the eighth note. So without any kind of chord, it would look like this: 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Or if I was using a pick, it would look like this: 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. So the idea here now is that we're going to switch between the C and the G chord. I should note that usually somewhere around here on the 4th beat, some guitar players will cheat the chord and remove their fingers in order to transition to the next chord. Now, naturally, with the more experience you have and the more time you've been playing, the less you'll need to cheat this, right? So sometimes people will cheat all of count 4, and they'll do something like 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and you notice that I took all of my fingers off on count 4 in order to set up the G chord. Some people will do it on the and of 4, so 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1. And of course, at some point you do have to take the fingers off, but the idea is not to take it off anywhere that you would be strumming. So you might think that 16th note in between over in this space would be where you would change. So for example, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and a 1, right? So you lift off in between the and of 4 and the G. Now, I don't really think about it actually in terms of a rhythm. I'm not sure that anybody does, but if you had to notate it and put it down in a place, it would fall somewhere into here. Now, the point being that so many of our strings are open when we strum that when you take off the fingers and hit just the open strings in the transition, you have a good probability of notes that actually belong to the chord that you are no longer holding. So the sound is not too bad. It's not 100% accurate, but it is characteristic of the guitar. So it's a thing not to be worried about. If you have to pick up the fingers somewhere in this area to make the transition from one chord to the next, don't worry. It's a thing that guitar players do. The more time and the more experience, the more advanced you want to play, will determine how carefully you want to look at that particular detail. So as per usual, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put the metronome onto this. We do have a repeat sign here, so this is meant to be played twice through. I'm going to play through it just once because at the repeat, I'm going to switch techniques, and I'm going to do 3 techniques here. I'm going to do all 3 that I pointed out. The first one being the holding of indithe all the way down. so with the kind of more flamenco-ish kind of strum. And then the second technique will be with the thumb, and then the third one will be with the pick. And of course, always with a metronome, but I will go ahead and put this just a little bit slower so that way we can watch and play along carefully. 2, here it is. Start thinking about how you're going to transition. Now, in this particular example, I switched to the G chord that's using fingers 2, 1, and 3. You might also be familiar from earlier in the book, this more folkish kind of fingering. That's 3, 2, and 4. This is okay to do as well. I would argue that it actually sets up to the C a little bit better because 2 and 3 get to stay in exactly the same shape. So through this playing, that's the fingering I'm going to use, and I'm going to use the thumb. You'll notice that the more skin that's hitting it, the damper the kind of sound. It is a characteristic, and that's why I'll also be using this particular fingering. So here it is. Feel free to play along. 1, 2, here it is. And then this time I'm going to go ahead and play with the pick, and I'm going to switch back to the first version of the G chord. 1, 2, here it is. As per usual, go ahead and pause the video, practice along, play along, slow down the tempo, speed up the tempo, do as you need. Now, when we look at 74 strum variations, we notice that we're starting with a quarter note, and then it goes back into the typical eighth note variation or pattern that we were doing in the previous exercise. What you'll notice is that still count 1 and 2 are down strums. Here we have this term miss. That we have to miss on the way up. And again, the idea being that your hand is working as the metronome. It's always 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. So all of these next exercises, whether it be 74, 75, or 76, the right hand physically is doing the same thing in terms of the moving up and down. The difference now, think of it like a needle on a record player. It's going to be, the only difference is going to be whether the pick or the finger is making contact with the strings on its way up or not. So here we know that we're not going to hit on the and on the way up on the end of 1 because on count 1 we have a quarter note. So that rhythm being sounding like this. 1, 2, and 3, and 4. And notice that my finger still has to come up on the end of 1. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So the idea is the same in terms of the right hand being that metronome. Okay, same thing. I'm going to do it with indice strumming, then I'll do it with the thumb, then I'll do it with the pick. Here it is. And again, I used this version of the G chord going through it. If you're having trouble remembering these chords, remember that all the way in the back of the book, we do have chord chart here for you, so you can find there's the D7. Here's one version of the G chord, and there's your C chord if you want to find that other version of the G chord that's earlier on in the book. If you scroll back to where we were learning about chords over here. So we have those two versions of the G chord. Okay. So all of that is here for reference, and you have them in previous videos that you can refer to. So this time I'm going to do the other version of the G chord using fingers 3, 2, and 4, and I'm going to strum using the thumb. Here it is. Go back to that other version of the G chord using 2, 1, and 3, and I'm going to use the pick. 1, 2, here it is. Keep that third finger down when you slide between G and D7. It's like a pivot. So of course, feel free to stop the video, play along, slow down the metronome, speed up the metronome as you feel. The concept in 75 stays the same. Now, instead of missing on the end of 1, we will miss on the end of 1 and on the end of 3. But again, the concept being the same. The downbeats 1, 2, 3, 4 are down strums. The off beats, the ands, are the up strums. Just on the end of 1 and the end of 3, we're going to miss. So with the metronome, I'll do this one all 3 ways. 1, 2, here it is. And notice that the hand is like the metronome, moving in constant eighth notes. Now with the thumb. This time with the pick, here it is. All right, and now exercise 76 is our same rhythm as exercise 75, this time with the introduction of the E minor chord. There are 2 ways to do the E minor chord. We could do it with the second finger on the note B and the third finger on the note E, as it's showing us in this diagram. But we don't hear the fingers, we hear the notes, right, as I name them. So these can be played with any combination of fingers, and another common use would be with the fingers 1 and 2. So the first finger on the note B and the second finger on the note E. Why might you use one fingering over another? It has to do with context in terms of pivoting. If I were to go from E minor to, say, A minor, I might use this version with fingers 2 and 3, because when I go to A minor, fingers in 2 and 3 are going to be in the same exact shape, just going one string thinner. So it's less movement from coming from this shape. Same thing, if I were to go from E minor to G, I might want to use fingers 1 and 2, because the E minor and the G chord share that first finger B on the 5th string. So if I'm going to keep the same note in the same spot, we don't typically pick up that finger when transitioning. We call that a pivot. Now, this particular exercise doesn't have us changing any chords, so we're going to practice it both ways. First, I'm going to use fingers 2 and 3, then I'm going to use fingers 2 and 1. And we use all 3 strumming techniques that we identified throughout. Another new object to notice here is the diamond that is not circled in. This is the rhythmic notation version of a half note. So you notice that slash notation with stems on them is no longer slash notation. It's called rhythmic notation. We're notating a specific rhythm, but not the specific notes to be played within it. We just know that E minor, for example, is 3 notes, e.g. B. All of these chords are at least 3 notes. Some of them are 4. And it's not telling us what order to play them in, just that we have to play those notes. And there's many ways to play chords on the guitar. So we use rhythmic notation when we're not being specific about it. So just like with all rhythms and standard notation, in rhythmic notation we can use specific rhythms. The quarter note and the eighth note look the same, with the difference being the flags being beamed together. And then here, to do either a whole note or a half note, we would use the diamond that is not colored in. So this rhythm at the very end says 1, 2, and 3, and then it lasts through 4. Okay, first time striking with indice up and down. Second time will be with the thumb, and third time with the pick. Here it is using fingers 2 and 3. Here it is. Playing through that all the way. That's okay. Here it is now with the thumb. And I'm going to use fingers 1 and 2. 1, 2, here it is. That half note ring, don't get distracted. Here it is now with the pick. I'm going to go back to fingers 2 and 3. 1, 2, 2. Here it is. All right, so go ahead, pause this video, rewind, practice along, try it with the metronome, slow it down, speed it up, play along.